Is it possible to explore conscious living in a systematic way? Welcome, my name is Nithya Shanti, and I'll be taking you through the 4 dimensions of conscious living. I had a chance to practice as a Buddhist monk for about 6 years in Thailand and Sri Lanka. And in that time, I was exposed to many different aspects, many different teachings, from not only the Buddhist tradition, but from a wide variety of teachings and traditions. And over years of practice, this is my distillation of how I approach living a more conscious life. And let me share this with you. Essentially, I found that meditation can be explored in 2 ways. One is attention, which is a passive form, and the other is intention, which is an active form. Attention is, for example, being aware of what you're seeing, being aware of what you're hearing, feeling the touch of your breath. This is all attention. It's a passive form of being aware of what is happening. Intention is when you add an element to it. For example, not only am I breathing, I'm breathing in freshness and lightness. I'm breathing out any tiredness. Or I'm breathing in a beautiful breath. I'm breathing out any kind of heaviness, tiredness. And so like this, exploring our field of experience through the facet of attention and intention. Attention is simply experiencing reality the way it is without adding too many layers to it. Intention is the use of conceptual thought. For example, if you were to count your breath, that would be an intention practice. It's an active practice. If you were to send loving wishes for all, may all beings be happy, that would be an active practice. So I've divided this up into 4 elements: attention out, attention in, intention in, intention out. And this for me is a pretty comprehensive way in which we can explore conscious living. Let me share with you my favorite practices for each of these 4 dimensions. Let's start with attention out. By out, I mean what you're seeing, what you're hearing, smelling, tasting, and touching. Anything that you can experience with your sensory framework, that would be attention out. So right now, your eyes can be open. Notice what you're seeing, colors and shapes. Also notice what you're hearing, different kinds of sounds, without labeling them. Now add another layer to this. Experience the arising and passing away of your experiences. So for example, when you're hearing sounds, notice that you can hear a vibrational pattern of some kind, the beginning and the ending of a sound. And of course, when you see things, your eyes move. And even the things you are seeing, there can be some movement. This is called the direct experience of change. Not as a concept. We've all heard everything changes, everything changes. This is the direct experience of change. In what you're seeing, what you're hearing, and you can include the other sense doors as well, what you're smelling and tasting. And here's a good one, what you're feeling throughout the body at the level of sensation. For example, notice what you're feeling in both the hands. If there's any pulsation, vibration, anything that's arising and passing, that would be an example of change and the direct experience of change. This was a very big breakthrough for me because until then I had been approaching impermanence in a conceptual way, in an idea-based way. But in this way I actually experienced, it changes. Even a physical pain, the intensity rises, 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 and at some point it just collapses and disappears, goes away by itself. An itch arises, 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 And even if you don't scratch it, it doesn't stay permanently. At some point, it just dissolves. So attention out is paying attention to whatever you're experiencing. And it also includes even your inner experience inside the body is also attention out. Anything that's in the field of your awareness, like a sensation or an emotion, is also something I would consider attention out, and seeing the arising and the subsiding of that. That's the first dimension of conscious living. Experience your world through bare awareness and see the characteristic of whatever is arising and passing. Let's come to the second dimension. This is attention in. So this is also known as looking for the looker, seeking the seer. The lovely teaching that what we're looking for is that which is looking. And we keep looking for reflections everywhere, but ultimately it's here. In the Indian scriptures, this is known as the musk deer, mrignan, searching everywhere for this delightful fragrance, not knowing it's coming from its own body. So, in this second aspect of conscious living, we turn our attention backwards to the source of our attention. Who is aware? There's a famous question given by a great sage of India, Bhagwan Ramana Maharshi, and he kept saying, throughout his life, he invited people, ask the question, who am I? And don't just settle for the superficial answers by giving your name or giving your age or giving your gender or giving the work that you do. Keep asking, because all of those things can change quite easily. Keep asking, who am I? Who am I? Who am I? And the purpose of the question is to dissolve the questioner. The purpose of asking, who am I, is not to arrive at an answer. It's to arrive at a kind of silence, of just beingness. This can be confusing for some people, so there are different ways to approach it. One way to approach it is you ask yourself, what's happening now? Second, I'm talking right now, I'm sharing something I know. All right. Who's talking now? I am. Now, where did that sense of I am come from? Was it in the heart? Was it in the face? Was it behind my body? Where did that sense of I am? I'm talking right now. Where did that come from? So you go to that place, maybe like for me right now, it's somewhere in my heart. I'm talking right now. All right. So who am I? And in my case, all that happens is it's like there was some solidity I was imagining, and now suddenly I cut through it. And there's no person there, there's just presence. It's a shift from personhood to presence. That's what the second dimension of conscious living does. You see, you can spend years in just the first dimension, just practicing mindfulness. Mindfulness of different objects, different activities. You kind of get stuck and stagnate at some point. At some point, you have to ask yourself, who's meditating? Who's being mindful? Who's making these decisions? Who's trying to live a better life? I am. Who am I? And you get a sense that, wow, it's a shift from witnessing to life living life. It's not you living life, it's life living life. This is a wonderful shift. It's a wonderful unburdening that happens. So each time we question who is having this experience, it is attention back to its own source. And my experience is that the deeper we dive into this endless, you could call it, dimension of hunting the I, what Ramana Maharshi called hunting the I. Go find this I. Where is this I? This I is up to all the mischief. Let's find this I. And the deeper you dive into this dimension, simultaneously two things start to happen. You find that you're more and more a no thing, and simultaneously you're more and more everything and everyone. When you're with someone, you can really connect with them quite deeply. The blueprint of your life starts to come into higher and higher contrast, more and more resolution. You seem to know exactly what needs to happen at any given moment. And yet there's no sense of you doing anything. So this is the second dimension of conscious living, which is attention in, bringing the attention back to its own source. And I know that for some of you, this is all very unfamiliar. You're not used to these things. But everything starts off as unfamiliar. Anything new that we learn is unfamiliar to begin with. One of my teachers used to say, in the beginning, it's unbearable. In the middle, it's uncomfortable. And in the end, you're unstoppable. So even though something's unfamiliar, doesn't mean it is not appropriate for you, because we spend our whole life embellishing the I, doing so many things for the I. And very rarely do we ever question, but who is this I? What is this I? And what if this I is a big imposter? It was never an entity, it was just beingness. That's the second dimension of conscious living. Let's come to the third one. Intention in. Now, this is how you describe yourself. How do you describe yourself? Are you a human being going through a human world? A physical being going through a physical world? Are you an energetic being going through an energetic world? Are you a light being going through a light world? Are you pure consciousness moving through pure consciousness? All different ways of describing yourself. Some say, I am a soul in this world. God is in me. And some say, no, I am in God. What is your favorite way of describing yourself in the deepest sense? The way you describe yourself, that basic root identity, has a big impact on the way you live your life. If you say, I'm broken, and I need to be fixed, I need validation, I need love, your whole life will be a search for love. If you feel you're not enough, for many of us, that's a root program. I'm not enough yet. You keep trying to fill it up, fill it up, fill it up. So a nice way to explore this is to ask yourself, in my presence, what do beings experience? In my presence. So for example, in my presence, beings experience complete acceptance. In my presence, beings are fully expressed. In my presence, beings get in touch with a part of themselves that they had forgotten. You start giving meaning to a deeper identity that you have. And you can play with this, right? You can play with what is your deepest core assumption about yourself. Like one of my favorites is that I am God in clever disguise. God is grand overall design. And all of us are actually, not just me. We are all God in clever disguise. God has chosen to forget. Right? And in my presence, beings remember their true nature, for example. And if that's my core identity, then quite effortlessly, that's what's going to happen. So how do you define yourself? How do you see yourself? It's worth questioning. It's worth upgrading that. Is there a scope for that root identity to be upgraded, matching your innermost intuition? This will be the third dimension of conscious living. And the fourth dimension of conscious living is intention out. So as you connect with the world, as you engage with the world, what for you is the highest purpose? There are 4 beautiful teachings from the Buddha. Maitri, Karuna, Mudita, Upeksha. Let me say a Hindi doha, I'll translate it. Dukhi dekh man karuna jage, aisa brahma vihar ho. Sukhi dekh man mudita jage, aisa brahma vihar ho. सबके प्रति मैत्री जागे ऐसा ब्रह्म विहार हो और हर स्थिति में उपेक्षा रहे ऐसा ब्रह्म विहार हो. What does it mean? Dukhi dekh man karuna jage. When you see someone who is suffering in any way, the natural response of a balanced mind to someone who's suffering is compassion. You do what you can to relieve their suffering. It's just natural. Sukhi dekh man mudita jage. When you see someone who's happy, who's doing well, the natural response of a balanced mind to someone else's happiness is rejoicing. You rejoice in their happiness. You're happy for them. You share in their happiness. Sabke prati maitri jage. Towards all, the balanced mind has a response of loving friendliness. All are my friends. I've got no enemies. And that doesn't mean you're foolish. You will take care of yourself. But your basic attitude is one of wishing well. And the fourth one is har sthiti mein upeksha rahe. In the ups and downs of life, your mind does not oscillate, does not get affected. It remains balanced. Whether it's praise or blame, whether things are going your way or against you, you keep a balanced mind. Your heart and mind remain balanced. A lovely example of this, in Japan, there was a monk who lived on a small hill. And he was surrounded by villagers who would come and meet him. And they really respected him, they really loved him. And every morning he'd go down to get food, and they'd serve him food. He'd come back to a little hut, and he'd meditate there. One day, the village headman who happened to have a vegetable shop, his wife comes and tells him, do you know your unmarried daughter is pregnant? He's like, what? A big shock. What do you mean she's pregnant? How did that happen? So he goes and he interrogates his daughter. Who is the father of this child? You're not even married yet. With a lot of pressure, she reveals, it's that monk. She can't believe it. This holy man has been with his daughter. He gets so angry, so angry. The entire village goes up and they scream at him and they shout at him. Because he's a monk, they can't really hit him. They tell him, when that child is born, you take care of that child, none of our business. And he just said, is that so? Is that so? And they left. 9 months later, the child is born. And right away, they go and they hand him the infant, you take care of your child. So in the morning, he goes to get food. And some people give him food, and out of compassion, they give something for the baby as well. And this goes on for a few months. And one day, this daughter of this headman can't bear it anymore. And she goes and confesses to her father, I lied. The father of this child is actually the son of the fish seller. And I knew that you would never approve of that union. And I couldn't have the courage to tell you. It's like, what? You lied to me? What a big mess you created out of all of this. And he's so embarrassed. And the next day, the whole village goes up and they apologize. Please forgive us. Please forgive us. Oh my goodness, what have we done? And all the master says is that so? And he hands the child back with a lot of love. This ability to keep a balanced mind, is that so? Is that so? I like to say, how wonderful, no matter what happens, how wonderful. Because you don't really know what's a good thing, you don't really know what's a bad thing. Your mind remains balanced in all conditions. So like this, as you relate to the outer world, what is going to be your basic attitude as you relate to them? Right? My intention is that anybody who comes in contact with me leaves lighter and brighter, more in touch with their true self. And if that's my underlying intention, that's going to come into every single thing that I do. These are 4 dimensions of conscious living. Attention out. The way I practice that is being aware of the constantly changing nature of all sensory and as well as inner experience. It changes by itself. It doesn't require my permission. It keeps changing. Attention in, the source of my attention. Who am I? What am I aware of? Turning attention back to the source. You're not going to find an answer, but the question itself disappears. Intention in, how do you define yourself? In the most root, basic way. And finally, intention out, how you choose to connect and interact with the world. As you give attention to all these 4 dimensions and you clean them up, you start finding quite effortlessly your whole life takes on a beautiful flavor. And there's a sense of unburdening, unraveling. And you go lighter and lighter, clearer and clearer. So that was the teaching on the 4 dimensions of conscious living. And I wish you all the best. Be well. So I'm here in beautiful Goa and give you a look at the ocean. They say never turn your back to the ocean. So I'm wondering how to show this to you without turning my back to the ocean. So I'm offering a new course for Round Glass. It's called Shift Your Perception, Accessing the Unexpected Wisdom of Contradiction. And take on this radical thought, this contra-wisdom. Right where there is suffering, right there is freedom. An 8-part course. I'm going to be sharing with you unexpected ways in which you can make life more effortless and joyful. And for example, more important than where you're going is where you're coming from. When I say coming from, is not your past. It's the place in your heart, the place in your consciousness you're coming from. So that's we have a lady coming to tell me something. And so check out my new course on Round Glass. What if the opposite of what I believe is also true in some way? Very powerful question. Sometimes we get into a rut because of what we've been told. For example, we've been told success comes through hard work. And we've heard it so often. And we forget that actually success also comes from hard work. Can we define success on our own terms and not just what society expects? So we don't remember what people say, we remember how they make us feel. We don't care what people know until we know that they care. So the real shift in any case is a shift in the heart. That's where the transformation happens. When the voice and the vision on the inside gets louder than the voices and opinions on the outside, that's when you mastered your life. So in this course, I'd like you to get into a way of thinking about life where you regularly challenge what you believe to be true. While it's wonderful and supportive to have values, it's also tremendously freeing to, from time to time, drop the values. But any value is going to narrow your scope of how you experience yourself and your world. And it's nice to take a holiday from that once in a while. So I've put together some of my favorite contra wisdom in this course. And for me, there have been significant shifts, each and every one of them. And I'm sure you'll find something here that challenges your way of looking at the world and gives you a new perspective on life. There's a lovely quote by Mary Oliver, the wonderful poet, and she says, "Wouldn't God be disappointed if you're not dazzled by this existence at least 10 times a day?" It's an invitation to step out of the history and into the mystery. And that's what Contra Wisdom promises to do. Join me on Round Glass, where we go against the grain of what we think we know.